Okay, my husband and I just got back from our evening walk. We went down to take all of the Park Rose Neighborhood Pig watermelon rinds that were left over from dinner. This has been our routine the last couple of weeks. And on the way home, we were talking about Trump's Truth Social post from this morning. This one where he barfed up at 7 a.m. The Washington whatevers should immediately change their name back to the Washington Redskins football team. There is a big clamoring for this. Likewise, the Cleveland Indians, one of the 6 original baseball teams with a storied past, our great Indian people in massive numbers want this to happen. What the fuck are you talking about? Their heritage and prestige is systematically being taken away from them. Times are different now than they were 3 or 4 years ago. We are a country of passion and common sense. Owners get it done. Sorry, I was accelerating through that post because I was trying not to lose my shit reading it. First of all, okay, obviously, Trump is not in any way constrained by the truth. So of course he's going to make false claims using Indigenous people to justify bringing back racist stereotypes of Indigenous people. I mean, I'm not a sports ball person. I have never been a sports fan, despite the fact that I officiated roller derby for many years. It's probably the only sport outside of a tiny bit ice hockey that I care about. But I've never been like a rabid fan of any kind of sports ball. Not when I played basketball, not when my husband played college football. Like, I don't understand letting a significant portion of your personality be subsumed by a sports team. But whatever, I get it. A lot of people are really into it. And I get that a lot of people got really dysregulated when we saw sports teams be like, hey, maybe it's time that we set these racist stereotypes aside. Maybe there's like literally no reason for us to be doing this. And the Washington Commanders was one of those teams. And my husband was like, well, why is it that he woke up this morning and decided this was the thing that he was going to be upset about on his failing social media platform, Truth Social? And I was like, well, yeah, we can talk about how it's probably a distraction from the Epstein files. He wants his fan base, he wants the MAGA cult to swivel over to this side and enact their grievance and take their anger out over here. He wants to distract them from the fact that he has not fulfilled his promises when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. My kid was like, you know how politicians always say promises made, promises kept. She's like, every time you talk about the Epstein files and Trump, you should say promises made, promises broken. So I'm going to keep doing that because she's absolutely right. And okay, I understand that in many ways, people like to assume that Donald Trump is really strategic because after all, he's a billionaire and he has become president of the United States of America twice. So you must falsely presume like he's wicked smart and he's really strategic. But if you look at the ways he actually behaves and the things that he says, especially if you're not in the cult of MAGA and you're like, this makes no sense. What is he saying? This is just complete word salad. Or this decision that he's making is completely illogical. It not only, right, you could say he wants to hurt the economy. So I understand why he would do something to intentionally hurt the economy, to seek vengeance against America for the ways that he was prosecuted for the crimes he committed and was convicted of, for the ways that he wasn't reelected in 2020. Right, he's always out for retribution. So some of the things that he's done, you could say he is tanking the economy on purpose. But there's so many things that Trump does, including his tariffs, that are just bad for his own popularity, that are self-sabotage in many ways. And lately, the supposition is that Trump must be having some cognitive decline, and that's why his decision-making seems so chaotic. Why he does things that alienate his own base, why he does things that are self-sabotaging, why he is willing to take actions that seemingly have no purpose whatsoever. And I was saying to my husband, I think a lot of Americans, especially those who have not had relationships with malignant narcissists, are unaware of the level of impulsivity that a narcissist exhibits. And I think some of what we saw with this tweet this morning and a lot of Trump's behavior over the years can be chalked up to impulsivity. Let me give you an example. So do you remember a couple of months ago when Trump said that he wanted to reopen Alcatraz? And we were like, that's nuts, bro. What are you talking about? And Shauna Presley-Vircher, the political fixer, if you don't follow her, you should. She had a really interesting video that came out after that happened, where she said she did a little digging. And the night before on TV, the movie Escape from Alcatraz played, and there's a high likelihood that Trump watched it. And he got it in his head that it would be a cool thing to reopen Alcatraz. And that's what I mean when I say that narcissists have a high level of impulsivity. So we need to stop chalking everything up to some strategic grand master plan and understand that narcissists often act on a whim. They act on a whim. So who knows? Trump woke up this morning, he read something about the Washington Commanders, and he just popped off, right? Who knows whether it was an intentionally well-designed post to distract from Epstein? I think not, actually. I know the Trump regime is committed to gutting scientific research, but, back in the days when that kind of thing was still funded, just in 2021, there was a really interesting study that came out entitled Grandiose Narcissists and Decision-Making, Impulsive, Overconfident, and Skeptical of Experts, but Seldom in Doubt. This is by Stanford researcher Charles O'Reilly, and it was published in Personality and Individual Differences Journal. So they evaluated a number of characteristics of grandiose narcissists. So this study found that narcissists have a tendency to act with little forethought and reflection, and that they lack the self-control necessary to inhibit the behaviors that will thwart the attainment of their goals. Basically, like, they act on a whim and they don't second-guess themselves. This study also found that narcissists were more confident than the average person. It's those grandiosities, like, if I think something, then it must be a great idea. And also, definitely, it will come to pass. I absolutely will achieve my goals. If I say something is going to happen, it's going to happen. They also found that narcissists see experts as less useful. And furthermore, they tended to externalize blame if their grandiose plans did not come to fruition. So they have no ability to assess, or limited ability to assess, where they went wrong, where there was a failing on their own part. Instead, they externalize blame, which we see in Donald Trump continually still blaming Joe Biden and Barack Obama for literally fucking everything. Because they externalize blame, they continue to preserve their own narrative about themselves and maintain their confidence. And that means next time they have some kind of whim or make some impulsive decision, they will be just as confident that it will come to pass. Whereas you or I might be second guessing ourselves more if we had previous failure. No, because they externalize their failure onto somebody else. They always blame somebody else. They maintain their own grandiose sense of self and their own overconfidence. Grandiose narcissists are much more likely to act on the spur of the moment with little forethought, little afterthought, no self-evaluation, no ability to be critical of their own ideas, with a huge amount of overconfidence that whatever has popped into their head is going to be a super swell idea and it's actually going to be brought to fruition. And then also they're going to ignore expert advice that contradicts their own impulsive idea. Whenever I see Trump's decision-making, those patterns of behavior that seem so startlingly similar to other grandiose narcissists that, we may know in real life or historically, I'm reminded of that Rage Against the Machine song, Know Your Enemy. It's so important that we understand what Trump truly is. And the reason that his behaviors, his decision-making seems stochastic at times. It seems nonsensical. And I think because it's hard for us to wrap our brains around, because it's not how we would make decisions, it's not how we would evaluate an idea that we have, we can often fall into this trap of believing that he must have some kind of secret master plan. He must be far more intelligent and sophisticated than we can conceptualize. Nah, y'all, let's use Occam's razor. What do we know about grandiose narcissists? What do we know about their level of impulsivity, their inability to accept feedback, their distrust of experts, their overconfidence in their own beliefs, and their propensity to externalize blame when they fail? Do we really think Trump is a super genius with some great secret plan that we are unable to unravel, or is he an impulsive, grandiose narcissist? Now, his impulsivity doesn't make him any less dangerous. It doesn't make what he does any less insidious or any less harmful. But I think it's important to understand what we're dealing with when we look at ways to combat what he's doing. He's not the grand architect, y'all. Sorry to say. I know that his supporters think he's godlike. I saw a news article this morning where they call him daddy. Blah. But when you understand the patterns of behavior, when you understand the decision-making process, when you understand what drives him, you might understand who's driving the agenda behind him and why he seems so checked out and so disconnected and so blissfully unaware of the things that are happening in our government. He doesn't have his fingers in all the pie, y'all. He's not reading the executive orders. He's not getting briefed. He doesn't give a shit about actually governing and what's actually happening. He just wants to feel powerful, enact his vengeance, grift some, and have his impulsive whims indulged.